Welcome to Construction Tutor, and welcome to the Deep Dive.
It's great to be here.
Today, we are cracking open a dense technical stack of sources focused entirely on a phase of major construction that, it rarely gets the spotlight.
That's for sure.
This is what happens the very moment a massive government contract is awarded. That critical zero physical work phase before a single shovel touches the dirt.
You know, it's probably the highest leverage time in the entire project lifespan. We're looking at the mandated protocols that transform a thick, static, legal document, a contract, into something that's, executable, a dynamic, and most importantly, a safe project plan.
Right.
And our source material, specifically Module 4 on post-award orientation, it tells us that if you skip this, or even just gloss over this phase, you are setting the stage for chaos.
For absolute chaos.
Yes, cost overruns and almost guaranteed litigation 6 months down the road.
Exactly. Our listener, who we're calling the learner, is looking for a shortcut to understanding this highly structured world. They don't just want to know what the meetings are, they want to know why the structure is designed this way and, how to navigate it strategically. This phase isn't just about shuffling paperwork, it's where the contract ground rules are hammered out, mutual understandings are forged, and potentially very expensive future disagreements are proactively neutralized.
And to get that clarity, we are distilling the requirements that are embedded deep within the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or FAR.
FAR, right.
We're focused on the required conferences and meetings mandated by regulations like FAR 52.23626 and 52.236 Treaty. And these aren't, optional internal checklists.
Yeah, these are the law of the contract.
They are the absolute legal and operational scaffolding for guaranteeing quality and maintaining safety throughout the entire project lifespan.
So our mission today is to distill the objectives, the purposes, and perhaps most importantly, identify the key players and their responsibilities in these vital pre-construction steps.
That's the goal.
The big picture is that we're dealing with a very distinct mandated sequence of meetings, 3, sometimes 4, that transition the contract from a liability document into an actionable project blueprint.
And we really need to understand the strategic intent behind separating these topics. It's not arbitrary.
Not at all. Okay, let's unpack this with our learner in mind. Our source material outlines 3 mandatory meetings, plus that potential extra one. Now, in a fast-paced environment, the impulse might be to just, roll everything into one quick kickoff meeting, get it over with. For a massive government contract, why are so many distinct conferences required before any physical work commences?
Well, the necessity stems directly from the sheer scale, the complexity, and the profound legal accountability that's just inherent in government construction.
So it's not like a private sector job.
It's a whole different ballgame. Think about the difference between building, say, a single custom home and building a $100 million Army Corps of Engineers dam or an EVIFAC pier.
Right.
Unlike a private build, these projects involve multiple stakeholders, public funding, detailed regulatory compliance across dozens of domains. And, strict legal lines of authority and absolutely zero tolerance for ambiguities in quality or safety that could compromise mission readiness or, public trust.
So the government just can't afford to assume the contractor's project management team is operating under the same set of, unwritten expectations.
You can't assume anything, not a single thing, just because they signed the contract. You absolutely must dedicate specific time and resources to formally define the relationships, the procedures, the expectations, and the reporting mechanisms up front.
I see.
If you try to compress the administration, the safety, and the quality discussions into a single 4-hour meeting, I guarantee you half the attendees will zone out and key critical details will be missed.
It sounds like the overall structure is strategically designed almost like a funnel. An escalating series of focuses, moving systematically from the macro-level contract administration down to the micro-level operational details of construction quality.
Precisely. It's a perfect analogy. We move from the foundational legal framework to the hyper-specific, sometimes life-or-death issues of safety and the precision required for quality. We call them the 3 distinct pillars because each one supports a non-negotiable aspect of the project structure.
And if one of those pillars crumbles,
the whole project is at risk. It doesn't matter how good the original design was. If the administrative or safety foundation isn't there, it will fail.
So let's identify those 3 core pillars that absolutely must be stabilized before the first piece of heavy equipment even arrives on site.
Okay. So Pillar 1 is the broadest administrative setup. This is the post-award orientation conference, or sometimes it's just called the pre-construction conference.
Right.
It's required by FAR 52.23626, and this meeting handles the high-level contractual review. It's all about orienting the contractor to the government's fundamental procedures and defining the bureaucratic landscape.
The landscape. Okay. So who processes payments? Who issues contract mods?
Exactly. Who is the final voice on administrative matters? This is where the contract formally becomes manageable.
That makes perfect sense. You have to establish the command structure and the money flow first. Without that, you've got immediate friction. What about Pillar 2?
Pillar 2 is singular in its focus and absolutely non-negotiable. The Pre-Construction Safety Conference. This is mandated by FAR 52.23613.
And this is only about safety.
It focuses solely, exclusively, and entirely on the contractor's safety program, specifically their Accident Prevention Plan, or APP. This meeting demands separation because safety cannot be treated as just an addendum to an administrative checklist.
No, it needs its own space.
It requires dedicated review by specialized personnel to ensure compliance with stringent federal standards.
Okay, and the third pillar, the one that often demands the most preparation from the contractor side and really dictates the successful completion of the build.
That is Pillar 3, the coordination meeting or the mutual understanding meeting. This one is focused entirely on construction quality management, or CQM.
CQM, right.
This is where you iron out the minute details. The specific forms, the exact testing procedures, the documentation submission timelines, and the day-to-day mechanisms for ensuring the build meets every single line of the specifications.
So Pillar 1 is the constitution of the project.
Then Pillar 3 is the operational manual. It's the how-to guide.
I like that. And then we have the outlier, that fourth meeting mentioned in the sources, particularly in Navy contracts. Why would they insert another meeting focused just on quality before the main quality meeting?
That meeting, the QC plan meeting, which is particularly common in NavFac contracting, is really just an efficiency measure.
An efficiency measure, how so?
It happens before the contractor even finalizes and submits their formal QC plan. The goal is to develop a mutual understanding of the requirements for that plan.
I see. So it prevents them from going down the wrong path.
Exactly. If the contractor misunderstands the necessary scope or the level of detail or the required staffing for their QC plan, they could spend weeks submitting a document that gets immediately rejected.
And then they're back to square one, but the clock is still ticking.
Right. This preliminary meeting prevents that whole cycle of revision, ensuring the final submitted plan has a much, much higher chance of first-pass acceptance.
That's strategic risk reduction.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, our learner, the core concept here is that the post-award phase is not one event, but a series of highly differentiated control gates, each with a unique purpose and a unique attendee list, all designed to reduce ambiguity and future conflict.
Exactly. The ultimate objective across all three, or sometimes four pillars, is reducing project risk through radical clarity. The post-award orientation sets the contractual and administrative boundaries. The safety conference confirms hazard mitigation, and the coordination meeting sets the operational quality boundaries.
And failure in any one of these
Guarantees future conflict, potential safety incidents, and inevitable project delays.
Let's start the deep dive with Pillar 1, the Post-Award Orientation Conference. This is the official administrative launch. So when does this conference happen, and what is its primary strategic goal? We are essentially answering Exercise 4, Question 1, by laying out the timing and the objective here.
Okay, the timing is explicit, and it's crucial to the performance clock. The Post-Award Orientation Conference, or Pre-Construction Conference, is conducted as soon as possible after the contract award and, critically, prior to the commencement of any physical work.
So admin comes before mobilization, always.
Always. You have to prioritize it.
And the objective. We established it's administrative. But what specifically is the government trying to achieve by gathering everyone in that room?
The objective, and this is the answer to Exercise 4, Question 1, is pretty comprehensive. It is to review various contract clauses, including administrative requirements, personnel requirements, safety requirements, and procedural matters.
Okay, so it's a high-level review of the contract's operational constraints.
It is. But the true purpose is deeper. It's to formally orient the contractor regarding the government's operational procedures.
What does orienting the contractor mean in, practical terms on day one?
It means clarifying the critical lines of authority for contractual, administrative, and construction matters. The contractor needs to know definitively who is the authorized representative of the contracting officer, the ARCO, for day-to-day site direction.
And who the contracting officer, the KO, is, the one with the final legal authority.
Yes, for modifications and payments. And which representative handles specific administrative actions like change order processing or requests for information, RFIs.
Because without that defined structure, I imagine confusion over who signs what or who approves changes could just shut down the financial aspect of the project entirely.
It absolutely can, and it does.
Okay, here's where we move from those bureaucratic definitions to real-world timing. The source mentions aligning the notice to proceed date, the NTP, with the conference date. In the context of performance schedules and liquidated damages, what is the absolute significance of aligning the NTP with this conference?
This alignment is an operational necessity and a legal safeguard. The NTP is the official signal that the contract's period of performance begins.
The clock starts ticking.
The clock starts ticking. Aligning it with the post-award conference clearly denotes a coordinated, unambiguous start date. Imagine the alternative.
What's the alternative?
The contract is awarded on a Monday, the NTP is theoretically issued, but the contractor spends 2 weeks waiting for the first administrative meeting just to get clarity, on-site access, and reporting forms.
So they're burning schedule time before they even know the ground rules.
Precisely. They're losing valuable time. By aligning it with the conference, you prevent any future dispute over the contract's start date, and that protects both parties. The government gets an immediate, clean commencement of the schedule, and the contractor isn't penalized for time lost due to government administrative delays.
I see. It's a formal, coordinated transition from the legal award phase to the active administration phase.
That's it, exactly.
So this conference is the formal, legal, and operational transition point. And that leads us directly to exercise 4, question 2. If this is largely an administrative review, why is this specific conference so important?
Okay, answering question 2. This conference is vital because it formally establishes the ground rules for administering the contract.
The ground rules.
And this distinction is huge. The contract document itself establishes the terms. This meeting establishes the processes, the rules of engagement.
Can you give us a tangible example of a ground rule established here that prevents a future dispute?
Oh, sure. Let's talk about the payment process. A ground rule might cover the required format for certified payroll submissions, the specific date each month that invoices must be submitted to avoid late payment, and the government's mandatory review cycle for those invoices.
Right.
Now, if the contractor submits an invoice that doesn't meet the agreed-upon format and the payment is delayed, those post-award minutes, those ground rules, they become the reference point. They transform the contract from a theoretical agreement into a mutually agreed-upon workflow.
And that clarity it dramatically reduces the risk of administrative breaches or claims.
Absolutely.
Now, let's address that critical nuance, the scope limit. We keep saying that contractor quality control, CQC, and accident prevention, so safety, are mentioned. But the source emphasizes they are not normally discussed in detail here. For something as high stakes as construction, why would you intentionally exclude detailed discussion of safety and quality from as a foundational meeting?
That exclusion is probably the most strategic element of this whole module. It shows a deep understanding of both project management and, frankly, human attention span.
Okay.
First, these topics, quality control and safety, are simply too complex, too voluminous, and way too critical to be relegated to a line item in a general administrative meeting. They deserve and legally require their own dedicated time slots and full agendas in the separate conferences we're going to cover next.
And the other reason, which is arguably more operational, is the personnel involved, the people in the room.
Absolutely. The separation is vital for targeting the correct audience. The personnel attending the post-award conference are often high-level executives, contract managers, and administrative staff.
The people handling the money and the legal structure.
Right. If we spend 3 hours reviewing concrete testing forms and fall protection strategies, we are wasting the time of the C-suite attendees. And more importantly, the people who actually need that detailed information, the site safety officer and the CQC manager, they might not even be in the room for this meeting.
So you hold dedicated meetings to ensure the people who execute the CQC plan and the accident prevention plan are the ones present when those specific operational details are discussed, not just their administrative bosses.
That's the strategic takeaway. The focus here remains strictly on the administrative framework, the contractual boundaries, and the lines of communication. Now, the discussion can vary based on the contract scope and the specific attendees, but the priority is establishing the framework, not executing the field protocols.
And we must emphasize the clear government responsibility for this meeting.
Yes. This is crucial for accountability. The post-award orientation is scheduled, convened, and conducted entirely by the government.
And who in the government handles that?
Typically, this is handled by the area engineer or resident engineer for USC's projects, the Army Corps of Engineers, or the ROICC or REICC for Navy projects.
ROIC, that's the resident officer in charge of construction.
Correct. And it is the government's duty to manage the agenda, conduct the meeting professionally, and most importantly, take detailed minutes and distribute them to all participants. This establishes the government's ownership of the entire administrative launch process.
So Pillar 1 is the administrative and legal scaffolding. It defines the who and the when of the contract.
A perfect summary.
All right, moving on to Pillar 2. We established that safety is too important for a general overview, so it receives its own mandated conference, required by FAR 52.236.13. If the post-award conference defines the legal framework, what is the singular, non-negotiable goal of this specialized safety conference?
The goal here is absolute risk mitigation. The purpose of the Pre-Construction Safety Conference is strictly to review and discuss the contractor's safety program, the Accident Prevention Plan, or APP.
So this is the firewall.
This meeting is the mandatory administrative firewall against preventable accidents, injuries, and federal citations.
And again, the timing is key. The source says it must be held after the initial receipt of the contractor's APP. What does that timing allow the government to do?
It allows the Government Safety and Quality Assurance, or QA, personnel to review the submitted plan proactively. The goal isn't just to talk about safety in the abstract, you know?
Right, you need something concrete to discuss.
You do. It's to achieve a mutual understanding related to the submitted and hopefully approved APP. The government needs time to scrutinize that plan, which details everything from site-specific hazards to required PPE, and identify any potential weak points, ambiguities, or areas of non-compliance with OSHA standards or federal contract requirements.
Let's delve into the actual content of that discussion, because this is where the theory of safety meets the reality of the construction site. What are the core components of that accident prevention plan that the government safety personnel are scrutinizing in this dedicated meeting?
While they're looking for specificity and compliance, they scrutinize several major areas. First, site-specific hazard analysis.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means, does the APP correctly identify the unique hazards associated with this specific project? For instance, are you working at heights? Are there deep excavations? Demolition of existing structures? Proximity to live utilities?
Things that are unique to that job site.
Exactly. And they want to see detailed, step-by-step mitigation strategies for each identified hazard, not just generic safety language.
And what about the mechanisms the contractor uses to enforce that plan on a daily basis?
They look very closely at safety management systems. This includes defining the contractor safety organization, detailing who holds the authority to stop unsafe work, the stop work authority.
Which is critical.
It is, and the mandatory reporting structure for accidents and near misses. The government needs assurances that the safety program is fully supported by the contractor's senior management, not just, run by one person in a trailer.
Fall protection is always a massive liability on construction sites. Is that a specific discussion point?
Absolutely. They will review specific plans for fall protection and scaffold or excavation safety. They want to confirm that the training protocols are compliant, the equipment inspection schedules are robust, and the site-specific plan for scaffolding or shoring meets technical specifications.
And what if it's a particularly hazardous job?
If the project involves highly hazardous activities like tunneling or handling hazardous materials, hey AZ, Matt, those protocols receive intense, dedicated scrutiny during this conference.
It really sounds like the government is essentially stress testing the APP before the contractor ever executes it. If they spot a deficiency, what happens?
And that's exactly why this conference is necessary. If the government safety representatives identify areas where the APP is non-compliant or insufficient, maybe the training timeline is too slow, or the emergency response plan is vague, they flag it immediately.
And they have to fix it.
The mutual understanding established here requires the contractor to formally commit to revising and correcting those deficiencies before the hazard emerges on site. This dedicated meeting ensures everyone, the government QA staff, the contractor's project manager, and their site safety officer, is perfectly aligned on safety standards.
So it makes the theoretical document a practical, agreed-upon site protocol.
And that reflects the non-negotiable priority that the FR places on worker safety.
Okay, moving from safety protocols, which prevent disaster, we transition to quality protocols, which ensure the structure is sound. And that takes us seamlessly into the third pillar.
The CQM core.
This meeting is where the complexity truly peaks. Construction quality management. The name itself, the coordination meeting, signals that we are moving beyond administrative rules and into the real mechanics of building. What is the immediate logistical groundwork the government needs to cover here, and who is responsible for running the show? We are now tackling Exercise 4, Question 3.
Logistically, this meeting is similar to the post-ord conference in terms of its command structure. Answering Exercise 4, Question 3, who schedules, convenes, and conducts it? The government is still in the lead.
But a different part of the government team.
Yes, this is handled by the operational team. The area, resident, or project engineer, the person who lives on site. They're supported by the senior government engineer, or SGE, the ROICC or EICC if it's a Navy job, and crucially, the quality assurance representative, the QA rep.
These are the people who will be actively inspecting the work and signing off on materials, so it makes sense that they need to set the standards, and the timing remains firm. Must be pre-construction.
Absolutely firm. This meeting must be held before any physical work begins. If you start pouring concrete or installing specialized systems before you've mutually agreed on the testing protocols, the inspection documentation, and the lines of authority for rework,
You've already lost control of quality.
you have fatally compromised the quality management system. The project might meet the design specs, but the documentation necessary to prove it will be broken from the start.
Okay, let's get into the purpose. Addressing Exercise 4, Question 4. Beyond the general goal of quality, what are the 4 primary stated purposes the source material emphasizes for this meeting?
The purposes are designed to establish a robust, shared quality system and ensure seamless communication flow. The first purpose is fundamental,
Which is?
to achieve a mutual understanding with the contractor of their role in quality control. CQC. This is a critical distinction. The contractor owns quality control. The government performs quality assurance.
Control versus assurance.
Right. The meeting ensures the contractor understands that their CQC manager is responsible for inspection, documentation, testing, and coordination, not the government. The government QA role is auditing the contractor's CQC system, not replacing it.
That distinction, control versus assurance, I imagine that's a frequent point of friction if it's not clarified right up front.
It is. The second purpose directly relates to execution. To review the QC plan with the contractor. The source material is very clear here. The government must receive and have time to review the QC plan before the meeting.
They need to do their homework.
They do. This preparatory time allows the government QA team to come into the meeting armed with specific questions and points of necessary clarification. And while the plan is reviewed here, acceptance often happens shortly after the meeting, following any minor revisions discussed.
Okay, what's the third purpose?
The third purpose is softer, but it's strategically vital. To establish a good working relationship between the government and the contractor. High-stakes quality control is a team sport, not an adversarial process.
Right, you don't want it to be a constant battle.
You don't. This meeting humanizes the interaction between the CQC manager and the QA representative, building a foundation of trust that helps overcome the inevitable technical disagreements later on.
And the fourth and final purpose.
To verify that the contractor fully understands the quality control assurance, contractual lines of authority, and the proper processes, policies, and procedures for communication and documentation.
So detailing the whole workflow.
Yes. Detailing the flow from a contractor's submittal request through the government's review cycle to final documented approval. Every piece of paper must follow the agreed-upon, verified path.
That's a comprehensive framework. Now, let's talk about who needs to attend. Addressing Exercise 4, Question 5. If this meeting is so operationally detailed, who needs to be in that room? It sounds like we need the technical experts, not just the general project managers.
That is the defining rule of this meeting. Answering Question 5. Personnel directly involved in the day-to-day construction quality management must attend, and that means both government and contractor representatives.
Let's explore the rationale for that tight attendance requirement. Why can't the information just be, passed down later through an email or something?
Because mutual understanding cannot be reliably achieved secondhand. It just can't. The CQC manager, the field superintendent, and the government QA representative, they are the ones who will be interacting daily over things like concrete slump tests, rebar placement tolerances, and material acceptance forms.
People on the ground.
But people on the ground. They need to hear directly from the source the expectations for documentation, inspection frequency, and hold points. If the CQC manager tries to interpret the QA rep's expectations based on notes taken by the project manager, you introduce immediate friction and misunderstanding.
And what about subcontractors?
That's a great point. If specialized subcontractors are involved in performing or documenting quality control, say the mechanical sub is responsible for certified pressure testing, their responsible personnel should also attend. They must receive the information and establish that mutual understanding firsthand, ensuring no critical quality details are corrupted or lost through management layers.
So this meeting is where the operational staff really synchronizes their watches.
Perfectly put.
Now let's get into the weeds, which is where the real value of this deep dive lies. Addressing Exercise 4, Question 6. Since this covers a full spectrum of CQM requirements, what are the specific critical topics discussed, and what strategic preparation is implied for the CQC manager?
Okay, the discussion here moves past general philosophy and into the physical administration system. The overriding goal is to develop a mutual understanding of the quality control system details.
System details. Let's make that tangible. You used a concrete pour analogy earlier. How would that play out here?
Okay, so the critical topics include the exact forms for recording CQC operations. Which numbered form does the contractor use to log the daily inspection of the rebar cage? Which form documents the required slump and air tests? How are design activities, if any, are outsourced, documented? How are control activities like corrective action resulting from a failed test logged and closed out?
So it's a dry run of the bureaucracy involved in pouring that single slab of concrete.
Exactly. They discuss the full system administration for both on-site work and off-site work. For instance, if structural steel is being fabricated off-site, how and when is the government QA representative going to inspect the welds at the fabrication shop?
That's a good question.
How is that inspection documented, and how does that documentation integrate into the site QC log when the steel finally arrives?
And most critically, they define that relationship between the two parties one final time, that CQC versus QA relationship.
Yes, they must define the precise interrelationship between the contractor's management and control, the CQC, and the government's quality assurance, the QA. This is where they solidify the fact that the contractor's CQC is mandatory, comprehensive, and non-delegable.
Meaning the contractor can't push that responsibility onto the government.
Never. The government QA process is an audit. It verifies the contractor's compliance. It does not take on the contractor's liability or responsibility for ensuring quality. If a test fails, the contractor initiates the correction, not the government.
So given that level of operational detail, what's the strategic implication for the contractor quality control manager's preparation before walking into this meeting?
The implication is profound. The CQC manager must be prepared to practically teach their QC plan to the government team.
Teach it, not just present it.
Exactly. They must be able to review and discuss all these detailed system elements, including the sample forms, the testing matrices, the frequency of required meetings, and every administrative process. They cannot rely on a high-level summary. The CQC manager must demonstrate intimate, thorough familiarity with every required system detail and be prepared to defend or clarify its operation.
They are essentially presenting their operational quality control manual for vetting and mutual adoption.
That sets an incredibly high bar for preparedness. It turns the meeting into a true operational review rather than a simple introduction, which is exactly what the contract demands.
Now, let's discuss the contractual lifeline of this entire process: the minutes. The source material emphasizes the government's responsibility for taking detailed minutes for this coordination meeting. We describe them as invaluable. Why does the paperwork of this meeting carry such immense legal and practical weight?
This is the administrative insurance policy for the entire project. The requirement stresses that the government must take detailed minutes and provide copies because it reflects a realistic truth about human interaction.
Which is?
It is vital that everything important is included because, and I'm quoting here, verbal understandings tend to be remembered differently by different individuals, especially when millions of dollars and reputation are on the line.
We've all been there. Two people leaving the same meeting with completely different recollections of what was agreed to.
Correct. Let's use that fictional dispute example again. 6 months into construction, the foundation subcontractor argues that they were only required to submit concrete cylinder test results once per day. But the government KA rep insists they agreed to 1 test per truckload for a critical structural element. This difference could invalidate half the foundational work. If that disagreement dissolves into a he said, she said scenario.
The project grinds to a halt while lawyers argue over intent.
Exactly, and the signed minutes prevent that stall. They are the objective, recorded memory of the mutual understanding achieved. If the minutes clearly state, all concrete pours exceeding 50 cubic yards require 1 set of test cylinders per truckload, the dispute is resolved instantly. The minutes prove invaluable because they are the written, mutually accepted rules of the operational road.
And the power of these minutes is really cemented by the signature requirement.
Absolutely. These minutes must be signed by both the contractor and the government. This act transforms the meeting notes from a simple transcription into a formal, binding, shared contractual agreement. They become an active part of the contract administration documentation, confirming that the ground rules for quality control are not just acknowledged, but formally accepted by both parties.
Before we move on, we need to address that specific nuance the source provides for the Navy side of things, the NAVFAC exception.
Yes, the NAVFAC exception. The source notes that for Naval Facilities Engineering Command contracts, the responsibility shifts. The QC Manager, the contractor's representative, is responsible for taking and preparing the meeting minutes for the coordination meeting.
That's a big shift in responsibility.
It is, but it's strategic. It places the burden of accurately recording the mutual understanding onto the party who is executing the QC plan. It forces the CQC Manager to be intimately involved in documenting the very ground rules they must follow.
Okay, we briefly touched on the potential 4th meeting, the preliminary QC plan meeting, primarily associated with Navy contracts. Given how detailed the coordination meeting already is, what is the unique strategic purpose of this meeting that happens before the contractor even formally submits their quality control plan?
This meeting is purely proactive risk management and efficiency enhancement. It happens at the earliest administrative stage, after the contract is awarded, but before the contractor puts pen to paper on their detailed QC plan submission.
So it's a pre-submission clarity session, a huddle before the play.
Exactly. The core purpose is to develop a mutual understanding of the QC plan requirements prior to the plan development and submission. Think of it as a pre-flight checklist for the planning phase. Major government contracts often have extremely prescriptive requirements for the QC plan.
Like staffing minimums.
Staffing minimums, specific format standards, required forms, mandatory testing equipment lists, the list goes on.
And if the contractor misinterprets those requirements,
they waste resources.
Yeah.
They might staff the CQC team inadequately, use the long forms, or fail to account for required laboratory certifications. The government would then be forced to reject the plan, initiating a cycle of frustrating and costly resubmissions and revisions that burns weeks of schedule time.
So this preliminary meeting allows the government and the contractor to clarify ambiguities in the contract requirements regarding QC before the plan is finalized.
Yes, ensuring the contractor is building their quality control system correctly from the ground up. It's an investment in a smoother submission process down the line.
That's a key strategic insight. It's all about preventing those initial missteps that can snowball into major project delays.
That's what this entire phase is about.
We have completed the full cycle of the post-award orientation phase, navigating the legal, safety, and quality control pillars. For you, the learner, the value lies in connecting the dots, understanding how these 3 separate mandated meetings build on one another to operationalize a complex contract.
The strategic relationship is clear. The post-award orientation sets the administrative stage and defines the organizational chart.
Right.
The pre-construction safety conference prevents catastrophe and confirms mitigation readiness. And the coordination meeting prevents failure to comply and defines the standards for ultimate project acceptance.
So it's a mandated sequence of checks.
It is. A sequence designed to preempt 90% of future disputes.
Let's use the structure of Exercise 4 from our source material as a final high-speed summary, cementing the critical facts necessary for administering these contracts effectively. We've discussed the strategy. Now let's verify the operational knowledge.
A perfect way to transition from analysis back to application. Let's do it.
Okay, starting with question 1. What is the objective of the Post-Award Orientation Conference pre-construction conference?
The answer is to review various contract clauses, administrative, personnel, safety, procedural, and formally orient the contractor to the government's established lines of authority and administrative procedures.
Question 2. Why is the Post-Award Orientation Conference pre-construction conference important?
Because it establishes the critical foundational ground rules for administering the entire contract. It ensures administrative clarity from day one and coordinates the official start date via the notice to proceed.
Question 3. Who schedules, convenes, and conducts the coordination meeting or the mutual understanding meeting?
The government does this, specifically the operational field management team, like the area, resident, or project engineer, alongside the SGE or OICRIC and the dedicated QA representative.
Question 4. What are the primary purposes of the coordination meeting or the mutual understanding meeting?
There are 4. 1, to achieve a mutual understanding of the contractor's quality control role. 2, to review the QC plan, which must be submitted beforehand. 3, to establish a necessary good working relationship. And 4, to verify a full understanding of the QC/QA contractual lines of authority and precise documentation procedures.
Question 5. Who attends the coordination meeting or the mutual understanding meeting?
Personnel from both the government and the contractor who will be directly involved in day-to-day construction quality management. This also includes responsible personnel from any subcontractors involved in quality control. The operational personnel must be present for the mutual understanding to be valid.
And finally, question 6. What are the most important topics of the coordination meeting or the mutual understanding meeting, and how should the CQC manager prepare for this meeting?
The most important topics involve developing a mutual understanding of the quality control system details. This includes specific CQC forms, testing procedures, documentation administration for both on-site and off-site work, and the interrelationship between contractor management and government QA.
And the preparation?
Preparation involves the CQC manager having thorough familiarity with and the ability to verify all these required system elements and administrative processes. They're effectively presenting their entire operational plan for joint adoption.
That is a definitive walkthrough of the post-award orientation process. We have covered the crucial preparatory steps that ensure the contract moves from paper to production safely and efficiently.
It's the foundation for everything that follows.
We've covered a remarkable amount of detail today. The ultimate takeaway for you, the learner, isn't just about, showing up to meetings. It's recognizing that the quality of the final construction, the physical structure itself, is fundamentally determined by the quality of these initial, highly detailed mutual understandings. The contract is just the legal framework. These mandated conferences are the giant effort to make that framework viable, verifiable, and safe.
And this raises an important question for everyone managing large, complex projects, regardless of the sector. If mandatory federal procedures require that verbal understandings are so unreliable that the meeting minutes must be detailed, distributed, and formally signed by both the contractor and the government to be considered invaluable later.
Right.
What small, seemingly administrative contract details might you be overlooking in your own projects that could lead to a massive dispute down the line? It's rarely a problem with the design of the main building. It's often the forgotten footnote about documentation standards or testing frequency that costs millions in litigation and delay. That administrative preparation is truly the best insurance policy you can buy.
That is a powerful point to end on. Taking those initial bureaucratic steps seriously dictates to the success of everything that follows. Thank you for joining us for this comprehensive deep dive into construction contract post-award orientation. We hope this knowledge helps you secure those aha moments in your next project briefing.
And remember, since you've spent this time learning with Construction Tutor, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next deep dive. We cover all the vital steps necessary to manage successful, compliant construction projects.
We'll see you next time.